Gravepulse series, Book 1, Gravepulse Hunted by R. Richards. Copyright at R. Richards 2025. Narrator, Roxy Rich. Chapter 1, The Fallen. The news had been blaring on our TV all day, just like it had for the past week. Mum and Dad sat in front of the screen, their eyes glued to it, their faces pale and lined with worry. Normally, our living room would be filled with chatter, the sound of me and my brother bickering over something silly, or the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. But today, the room felt like a different place. A place of silence, dread, and uncertainty, with the soft hum of the TV, the only sound that broke through. It was suffocating, thick with fear. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, nervously tapping my fingers on the counter, unable to shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest. My eyes flickered to the screen where the same footage had been playing on repeat for hours. It was like a nightmare that you couldn't wake up from. I wasn't even sure how much time had passed. Minutes? Hours? It was all a blur. The footage was haunting. The riots had started in the big cities first. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. At first it seemed like just another protest, like the countless ones we'd seen before. People were angry, demanding change, pouring into the streets with signs and slogans, shouting to be heard. But something changed. The footage on the news started showing scenes that were far more chaotic, far more violent than anything we had ever seen before. Fires spread like a wave through the cities. Buildings crumbled, cars overturned and set ablaze. The faces of the people in the streets, those once filled with anger or resolve, had turned into hatred, filled with something much darker. Mum and Dad didn't say much as their eyes were fixated on the TV, but they were scared, really scared. The fear, it clung to them, filled them with nervous energy. Dad's hand was gripping the armrest of the couch so tight that his knuckles had turned white. Mum kept fidgeting with her phone, glancing at it every few seconds, as though waiting for some kind of message or update that might make all of this make some sense. But it never came. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but it wouldn't go away. I couldn't stop thinking about the images I had seen on the news just the night before. Images that still played in my mind like a broken reel of film. People, once ordinary, now with bloodshot eyes, their faces contorted into an almost inhuman rage. They weren't just rioting anymore. They were attacking each other, biting, clawing, tearing at flesh like wild animals. But that couldn't be real, could it? My brain refused to accept what I had seen. The news had to be feeding our fears. It had to be. People didn't just turn into monsters overnight. This wasn't a horror movie. It was real life. I shook my head, trying to dispel the images from my mind, but they wouldn't leave. Hearing the screams, the way the reporters' voices had heightened in terror as they described the chaos, the way they had cut away from the scenes that were too graphic, too terrifying to show on live television. It was all so scary, so unnatural. "Alex!" My mum's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. She sounded strained, like she was trying to keep it together, but I heard the tremor underneath all of her bravado. "Pack your things! We're leaving soon." I blinked, my heart racing even faster now. "Where are we going?" My voice was so small, barely audible over the hum of the TV. I wanted to sound calm, but the fear had taken root inside of me, squeezing my insides tighter with every passing second. I wasn't ready to admit it to myself, but I was scared, really scared. Mum didn't answer right away. She exchanged a quick glance with Dad, who was still watching the news, his jaw set tight. She turned back to me, her lips pressed into a thin line. Probably to the bunker, it's safe. Away from the cities. To the bunker? I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. My heart had been racing since last night, since the news first showed the images of those bloodshot eyes, of people biting, tearing at each other like wild animals. But that wasn't possible, right? Something bad was happening. It all seemed so surreal. Just pack. Dad snapped, standing near the TV. His usually calm face was pale and lined with something close to fear. I'd never seen Dad scared. Not like this. Get what you need and nothing more. We'll be heading to the bunker tonight. We had a bunker. Of course we did. My parents were preppers, always ready for the next big disaster. I used to roll my eyes when they stocked up on canned food and made me practice escape drills. Now, all of that didn't seem so stupid. The world outside was falling apart. I nodded, but the words didn't bring me any comfort. Safe. What did that even mean anymore? Everywhere seemed dangerous. The thought of leaving home, of abandoning the only place that I had ever known, sent a wave of panic crashing over me. But what other choice did we have? Staying didn't seem like an option either. My hands were shaking as I headed upstairs to pack. My room looked the same as it always had. Posters on the walls, books piled on my desk, clothes strewn across the floor. I threw in some clothes, some tampons, my sketchbook, a flashlight, and the knife Dad had given me for my 16th birthday. He said that every girl should know how to defend herself. I had laughed it off then, thinking it was overkill. Now the heaviness of the blade in my hand gave me some reassurance, even if I didn't understand what we were about to face. It was such a normal scene, and yet the world outside was falling apart. How had everything changed so fast? Just a week ago, things had been fine. We had been going to school, making plans for the weekend, talking about the future. Now none of that seemed to matter. As I stuffed clothes into a bag, I heard footsteps behind me. It was my little brother, Danny. He stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Are we really leaving?" he asked, his voice trembling. Is it like they're saying on the news? Are people really? I hesitated, unsure of what to say. It was impossible to explain something I didn't totally understand myself. "Yeah, we're leaving," I insisted, although my voice was quieter than I intended. "It's going to be okay, Danny. Mum and Dad, they'll keep us safe." But even as I said the words, I wasn't sure I believed them. Danny's eyes were full of doubt too. He was only 6 years old, and the idea of leaving home, of running for something so terrifying and unknown, was overwhelming for him. It was overwhelming for all of us. I finished packing. My mind was racing. Outside, the sky had started to darken. The sun was sinking below the horizon. Long shadows started to creep across the street. The world went eerily quiet, too quiet. It was a deadly silence. I joined my family downstairs where the tension was tangible. Mum was hurriedly throwing supplies into bags, food, water, first aid kits, while Dad kept checking the locks on the doors and the windows, as though expecting someone or something to come knocking. Dad was loading his gun. I stared at him, my throat tightening. "Dad, what's going on?" He paused, the shotgun in his hands, and for the first time in days, his blue eyes met mine. "Alex, it's either a virus or a bioweapon. Nobody knows for sure, but it's bad, Alexandria. Really bad. It's spreading faster than anyone thought possible. People are getting sick, but it's not just a sickness. They're turning violent, attacking anyone they see. We've trained for this, okay? We'll be safe. Just stick with us." I nodded, but the fear crawled its way under my skin. Dad had only ever called me Alexandria when he was cross with me, but now he wasn't cross. I hadn't done anything wrong. He was just scared. I tried to focus on what he was saying, but the words on the TV kept pulling my attention back. Breaking news, outbreak declared in Atlanta. Hospitals overrun. Government orders quarantine. Mum's hand landed on my shoulder, snapping me back to reality. Sweetheart, stay close to us. It's going to be okay. But the fear, the tremble in her voice, did nothing to quell the storm clouds brewing in my mind. Stay close. Stay together, Dad barked, his voice steady but his eyes betraying his fear. We'll be okay as long as we stick together. We finished loading up the car just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Our house was on the outskirts of town, so we hadn't seen much of the chaos yet. But the air was full of smoke and something else. The smell of decay. We piled into the car, the gravity of the unknown sinking into all of our minds. As we drove away from the house, I couldn't help but look back, my heart aching with the realization that we might never return. Would I ever get to come home again? The world we had known had crumbled around us, and we clung to the hope of finding a haven to withstand the storm. We didn't understand what was happening or how it would end. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again.